when the black veil of night falls and the silence of the forest becomes a deafening roar. She arrives. Her name is Nora, the most mysterious witch in all of Africa. 100 years have passed since her death, yet every year, one child goes missing. The villagers of Ghana's dense forest region tell this tale in hushed voices, especially when dusk descends. They live in small huts made of mud and straw, nestled deep in the heart of the woods. As soon as the sun begins to set, the doors are shut, the fires are dimmed, and even the children know. No one steps out after dark, because they've heard the stories of a woman with fire in her eyes, bracelets made of bones on her wrists, and footsteps that don't touch the ground. Among them lived a boy named Kofi, just 12 years old. He was not like the other children. Where others feared, he grew curious. The tales that made people shiver in fear. He listened to them with wonder. One evening, as the red sun dipped behind the trees and the village prepared to lock up for the night, Kofi made a decision. He would see her with his own eyes. Silently, he slipped out, his bare feet padding softly over the forest floor. He hid behind a thick tree trunk near the river where, they said, Nora once walked at midnight. No one saw Kofi again after that night. His parents screamed through the forest, the village searched, but there was no sign of him. Just broken twigs and silence. A few claimed they had seen a shadow moving faster than the wind. A few said they heard a voice calling faintly, "Help me! Help me!" But the most terrifying thing? The next morning, a mask was found, placed gently on the doorstep of Kofi's mother. Not just any mask, Nora's mask. The mask was made of wood, painted in blood-red patterns, and had 2 hollow eyes, as if staring straight into your soul. No one dared touch it. Old women wept, the elders gathered, and for the first time in 20 years, the drums of mourning beat in the village. But that was just the beginning. 3 days later, a strange old woman appeared at the village gates. She wore torn cloth, her hair was wild, and her feet were bare. She mumbled in tongues, and her eyes were glowing. "I am Nora," she said, loud and clear. "You took my child from me. Now every year I will take one of yours." The villagers, horrified, declared her insane. They tied her up and burned her alive by the old river. But the next year, another child went missing. Every year, on the first night of the rain, a child disappears. And on some doorstep, a mask appears. Is Nora really alive? Or is this a curse, a ghost's vengeance? No one knows for sure. But if you listen closely, when the wind howls and the trees sway at night, you might just hear a whisper. "I am Nora, and I never forget." A year had passed since Kofi vanished without a trace. His mother, Mame Essie, had aged decades in weeks. Her laughter had faded, her arms had grown tired, and her eyes never stopped looking toward the forest. She wasn't the only one. The entire village of Ekon, once filled with joy and the music of drums, now lived in silent fear. No one spoke of it out loud, but the question haunted everyone. Who will it be next? After Kofi disappeared, the elders of the village called an emergency gathering under the baobab tree, a place sacred for generations. Elder Kwame, with his long gray beard and trembling hands, laid down 3 strict rules. No child must be left alone after sunset. No door must be left unlocked at night. And under no circumstances shall anyone speak Nora's name once the rains begin. Because as the legend went, saying her name during the rainy season was an invitation to the shadow. Rain approaches. It was now late March. The clouds above the forest grew heavier by the day. The birds sang less, and the wind carried whispers through the trees. The children stayed closer to their mothers. The men sharpened their spears, though none knew who or what they would fight. And then, one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, the first drop of rain fell. A single drop, on the mask that still hung outside Kofi's empty hut. That night, Ayo, a 9-year-old girl who lived at the far edge of the village, vanished. Her mother swore she had put her to sleep right beside her. The father said he heard the door creak, but saw nothing. And in the morning, on their doorstep, was another mask, slightly different from the first. But the hollow, soulless eyes were the same. This time, panic turned into rage. The villagers remembered the old woman they had burned a year ago, the one who called herself Nora. Some believed she had cursed them with her final breath. Others said she wasn't the real Nora at all, but the witch's messenger. So the elders sent 5 brave men with amulets, bows, and charms deep into the forest. Their goal: find Nora, destroy her. They never returned. On the 3rd night after Ayo vanished, a blind woman named Adwoa came running through the village. She had not spoken in years, but now her voice cracked the silence. "I saw her in my dream," she shouted. "She walks between trees like smoke. Her eyes burn like fire. She said she is not dead." The villagers gathered around her, terrified. She said, "I wait for my turn, one by one, until the debt is paid." Fear turned to suspicion. People started whispering that someone among them was helping Nora. Someone was opening the doors. Someone was guiding her. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Children were not allowed to speak to anyone outside their homes. The village, once united in tradition and trust, was now cracked by paranoia. They built wooden fences, carved protective symbols into the walls, and they waited, because everyone knew. The rain had only just begun. That night, as lightning flashed and thunder roared, Mama Essie walked outside for the first time in months. She stood before the mask on her wall. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Why, my son? What did you want from Kofi?" The mask remained still until the wind blew suddenly, so hard that it knocked the mask from the wall. And when it hit the ground, it bled. Just a few drops, red, thick, fresh. The scream that came from Mommy Essie's throat could be heard all the way to the river. The elders declared it, "This is no spirit, no mere story. This is a curse, a living one." Now, with 2 children lost and 5 warriors vanished, Ekon was no longer just a haunted village. It had become a hunting ground, and somewhere in the shadows, she was watching, waiting, counting. The people of Ekon had almost stopped sleeping. Even when eyes closed, the mind wandered into nightmares, whispers behind walls, shadows under beds, masks hanging from unseen hands. And every time the rain fell, even lightly, mothers would pull their children closer, covering them in charms, amulets, and prayers. But nothing could stop the feeling that someone, or something, was always watching. On the 7th day of the rain, 2 brothers, Kojo and Yaw, went to fetch water from the river at dawn. They had barely reached the banks when Kojo noticed something tangled in the reeds. It was a doll, old, wooden, burnt at the edges, and tied around its neck was a string of tiny bones. Yaw screamed. Kojo dropped the water pot. The doll floated on the surface, slowly spinning. Then Kojo noticed something else. Carved on the doll's back were 4 letters. Kofi. The doll is brought to the village. The boys returned with the doll, shivering and silent. The village elders gathered once more beneath the baobab tree. Elder Kwame held the doll in his wrinkled hands and murmured, "She's marking them." One by one, even after they're gone. They placed the doll at the center of the village, surrounding it with ash, salt, and burning herbs, hoping to break the curse. But that night, the fire went out on its own. And the doll? It disappeared. The return of the mask. The next morning, a new mask appeared. But this one was different. It was twice the size, blackened and cracked like charred wood. Its eyes were hollow, but crying red streaks. This time it wasn't found on a doorstep. It was nailed to the baobab tree itself. Beneath it, written in thick mud, were words no one had seen in years. Bring back what you stole. A young girl named Afia, barely 16, approached her grandmother that evening with a question. "Grandma, what did we steal from her?" Her grandmother's lips trembled. She looked away. But then slowly she spoke. "Long ago, before your mother was born, this land did not belong to us." Afia blinked. "What do you mean?" The old woman whispered. "This village, this river, this forest, once belonged to the Yu clan, and Nora was their priestess. She was not evil. She was the guardian of the river, the healer of the woods. But when the drought came, and the crops died, our ancestors blamed her. They accused her of curses of witchcraft, and they burned her with her own child in her arms." Afia could hardly breathe. "We killed her child?" she asked. Her grandmother nodded. And with her dying breath she screamed, "You take mine, I take yours." That night, Afia didn't sleep. She sat outside, staring at the forest, trying to understand what they had done and what price they were now paying. The next day, Afia gathered 3 other brave villagers. Yaw, the boy from the river; Ajoa, a girl who could speak to animals; and Kojo, the older brother. She told them what her grandmother had revealed. They didn't wait for the elders' permission. They decided to go to Nora's grave. They would find it, dig it, speak to her, or offer something, anything to stop the curse. At midnight, with only the moon to guide them, they crept into the forbidden part of the forest, past the river, past the dead trees, and into the land where no animal dared step. One by one they found feathers, burnt symbols, broken dolls, and blood-marked stones, until finally, in a clearing, they saw it, a mound of black earth, surrounded by masks buried halfway into the ground. In the center was a wooden marker with a name. Nora Afia stepped forward and knelt beside the grave. She placed her palm on the soil and whispered, "We are sorry. We didn't know. We want peace." The wind stopped. The trees stood still, and then from beneath the ground came a faint hum, like a mother's lullaby, but broken, bitter, cold. Afia gasped. The others stepped back. Suddenly the earth trembled. The masks in the ground turned. Their hollow eyes all faced Afia. A voice whispered from below, "Bring him back." The earth had spoken. The voice was real. Afia stood frozen beside the grave, her fingers still touching the soil that had just whispered. Yaw, Kojo, and Ajoa stared at her with wide eyes. "Bring him back." The words echoed in all their minds. But who was him? Could it be? Afia couldn't sleep that night. She kept hearing the hum, the whisper, the stillness of that cursed grave. The next morning she went straight to Elder Kwame and told him everything. The old man's face went pale. "It's true then. She doesn't want revenge," he muttered. "She wants her child." Afia nodded. "But Kofi is gone." Kwame looked out toward the jungle and sighed. No one truly vanishes in these woods, not when Nora is involved. Later that day, an elder woman named Mama Dady called Afia to her hut. She was the oldest in the village, nearly 100 years old. Her eyes were white with blindness, but her ears had heard the screams of Nora long ago. She handed Afia a pouch made of animal skin. Inside it were a black feather, a white bone, a dried petal, and a tooth. "Bury these under the bone tree at midnight," Mama Didi whispered. "It's the only place her child was last seen before the burning." "But where is the bone tree?" Afia asked. Mama Didi pointed east, "Where no bird sings and no shadow falls." That night, Afia, Kojo, Ajoa, and Yaw made their way east. The path grew narrower, the trees taller, the silence heavier. They finally reached a clearing, and there it stood, a tall, twisted tree with branches like bones. Its bark was pale white, like old ivory, and its roots looked like skeletal fingers crawling from the earth. No wind blew here. No insects buzzed. Even the moonlight refused to touch the tree. Afia stepped forward and knelt. She began to dig with her bare hands. As she buried the pouch, the ground beneath the bone tree trembled. Kojo shouted, "Afia, step back!" But she couldn't. Her hands were stuck. The earth had gripped her. Then suddenly, the soil softened, and a small wooden cradle emerged from under the roots. Inside it lay a baby's cloth, burned on the edges, with a single bone bracelet. Everyone gasped. The wind howled through the trees. The cradle trembled. Then they heard a child's cry, faint, far, like it was echoing through time. Ajoa whispered, "Her baby. His spirit is still trapped." They took the cradle back to the village, but the moment they stepped inside Econ's boundary, all the fires in the village ignited on their own. People screamed, children cried. And in the middle of the square, the burned mask appeared again, floating in midair. A voice thundered from the sky, "Return what you took!" Elder Kwame fell to his knees. "What more do you want from us?" The voice replied, the name you erased." Everyone looked around, confused. Then Mama Didi emerged from her hut, leaning on a stick. She raised a trembling hand. "She wants us to speak his name, the child's name, the one burned with her." "But no one remembers it," said Yaw. Mama Didi whispered, "I do." She pointed at the cloth in the cradle. His name was Malik. The moment she said it, the flames died out. The mask fell to the ground, and the village fell silent. That night, every child in Econ had the same dream. A boy standing beneath the bone tree, smiling. He held a doll in one hand and a mask in the other. He said only one thing, "Tell my mother. I remember her." The sky over the village of Econ was black. No stars, no moon, only the sharp whistle of the wind and the whispers of the trees. That night felt heavier than usual, as if something ancient had opened its eyes. It had been 40 days since little Kofi disappeared, and with each passing night, fear grew thicker in the air. That's when the village elders made a chilling decision. "We must end it now. Nora must burn." The ritual drums echoed across the land. Women locked their doors and clutched their children close. Men lit torches and sharpened spears. An old man named Omba, the oldest in the village, stood on a wooden platform. "She is not just a spirit," he shouted. "She is a curse wearing a woman's face. We must dig up her bones, find the place where she died, and burn her completely." But not everyone agreed. Afia, now 16, stood in the crowd, her hands trembling. "What if Nora was not the monster?" she whispered to her friend Kojo. "What if she was a mother searching for her child?" Kojo hesitated, but the crowd had already chosen fire. That evening, a group of men followed the whispers of the forest to a hidden glade. There, buried beneath the roots of a crooked tree, they found bones wrapped in black cloth, skulls, bangles made of tiny bones, a mask with 2 hollow eye holes. "This is where she died," one of the men whispered. "This is where Nora screamed her last." They built a pyre, tall, wild, angry. As the flames rose, so did the wind, but just as they lit the bones on fire, it began to rain. The villagers saw the fire fighting the rain. Smoke spiraled upward, black, thick, and almost alive. Suddenly, a scream tore through the forest, but it wasn't human. It sounded like 100 birds crying at once. Children covered their ears. Some began to weep. In the middle of the crowd, Afia saw a figure in white standing near the flames. The figure wore a mask. Its arms hung low, its head tilted sideways. She blinked. The figure was gone. That night, no child went missing. In fact, for the first time in years, the village felt quiet, peaceful. The elders smiled. The fire had worked. "Nora is gone," Omba declared. But Afia could not sleep. She kept hearing the same lullaby Kofi's mother used to sing. Only, it was slower now, and sadder. A visit in the night, Afia awoke to find her door open. A breeze swept through the hut, carrying the scent of ash and something older, like burnt honey. At the edge of her room stood a woman, tall, dark-skinned. Her hair was in long dreadlocks covered in beads, her eyes glowing. "You burned me once," the woman whispered, "and still you do not listen." Afia couldn't breathe. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I was a mother," said the figure. "Before they took my child, before they made me a monster." The woman sat beside Afia, her voice turning into a song. "Long ago, they blamed me for a disease I did not cause. They said I cursed their crops. They said I stole their sons. So they dragged me to the forest, and they burned me alive, all while I screamed, 'My child is still in your village!'" Tears streamed down Afia's face. Nora continued, "The fire didn't kill me. It awakened something darker, a spirit inside the tree. It gave me a choice, become its voice, or let my grief consume me." She chose vengeance, but all she ever wanted was justice. Nora stood. "You burned my bones, but you did not burn the tree. You silenced my name, but you never told the truth, and now something worse is coming." Afia trembled. "Worse? The forest is waking, and this time, I won't protect you." The mask appears again. The next morning, the village was buzzing with joy. "No one disappeared last night," children cheered. But as Afia stepped out, she saw something chilling on her doorstep. A mask. The same mask Nora wore, but this time, it was cracked down the center, and inside it was a single baby tooth. Kojo appeared behind her. "Do you think it's over?" Afia shook her head slowly. "Number, I think the real story is just beginning." The village of Ekon basked in rare sunlight. Children ran freely again. Mothers smiled as they watched them play. It felt as if the nightmare of Nora had ended, as if the curse had finally lifted. But the jungle remembers what the people forget, and the bone tree never forgets. 3 days after the ritual, Afia was walking near the forest's edge when she heard something odd, a soft humming, the same lullaby Nora had sung during the fire. She froze. "Just the wind," she whispered to herself. But the wind does not sing lullabies. The return of fear. That night, Kojo woke up screaming. "I saw her," he cried, "in my dream, but she wasn't angry, she was crying." Afia, Adjoa, and Yaw gathered to talk. "Maybe we didn't end the curse," Yaw said nervously. "But she's gone," Adjoa replied. "We saw her disappear." Kojo looked at them, eyes wide. What if that wasn't the real Nora? Mama Didi's secret. They returned to Mama Didi's hut. When she opened the door, she looked older, weaker. "You feel it too?" she said before they could speak. Afia nodded. "Something isn't right." Mama Didi lit a black candle and placed a bone in the fire. "When a curse ends," she whispered, "the soil breathes easy. But I've been dreaming of hands under the ground, reaching upward." She looked at them with fear in her eyes. "Children, what if the curse wasn't Nora? What if she was just a gatekeeper?" Long ago, before Nora, before Chief Akoto, before even the first huts of Ekon, the jungle was ruled by a spirit without a name. It lived inside the bone tree. It fed on grief. It drank fear. And every 100 years it demanded a price, a child, a soul, a song of sorrow. Nora, in her pain, had made a deal. "If I protect my son," she had whispered in her final moments, "I will take your place. Let me be the fear." And the spirit agreed. That night, Nora burned, and the tree slept. But now, Nora is gone, and the real curse has awoke. The next morning, The villagers awoke to another shock. A baby goat was found slaughtered near the bone tree. Its blood formed a symbol, a circle with a broken line. Mama Didi trembled when she saw it. "It has begun," she said. "It's no longer choosing one child. It wants them all." Kojo whispered, "Then what do we do?" Mama Didi replied, "We run." But Afia stood firm. We fight, like Nora did. That evening, Afia returned alone to the bone tree. She stood before its twisted trunk, breathing deeply. "Nora," she whispered, "you protected us once. Please, help us again." The wind blew hard. The bark cracked. And then, a hidden door in the tree creaked open. Afia stepped inside, the heart of the curse. Inside, the tree was hollow. Glowing roots wrapped around ancient bones. Skulls of animals and children lined the walls, and in the center, floating in darkness, was a heart made of ash. It pulsed slowly, thump, thump. Afia reached for it, but a voice echoed all around her. "Are you willing to trade your soul?" She froze. Then she whispered, "Yes, if it means saving the others." Outside the tree, Kojo and Yaw waited nervously. Suddenly, the tree shook. A scream came from within. They rushed in to find Afia collapsed on the floor. She opened her eyes slowly. Her pupils were now gray, her voice calm, but distant. "I saw it," she said. "The spirit. It's ancient, hungry, but scared." "Of what?" Yaw asked. "Of fire, of truth, and of those who are not afraid." That night, the villagers saw a firelight glow from within the bone tree. Afia stood at its base wearing the mask Nora once wore. Mama Didi stepped forward. "Child, what have you done?" Afia smiled softly. "I made a promise. I will be what she was. I will guard this village." "But you're just a girl." Afia turned, her voice steady. "Not anymore." And so it begins again. The bone tree no longer cried. No more masks appeared, no more children vanished. But every now and then during heavy rain, some say they see her. A girl in a white dress standing by the tree, humming a lullaby only Nora used to sing. The curse did not end. It changed keepers, and Ekon remains haunted. But this time, by a protector. The heavy clouds gathered over Ekon village like a dark curtain preparing to fall. The rainy season was beginning, and with it the old fears stirred once again. Every year when the first rains hit the ground, whispers of Nora returned like the echoes of a storm, cold, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Afia stood near the edge of the forest, her eyes fixed on the path where Kofi had vanished months ago. The ground was soft and muddy, dotted with fallen leaves and broken twigs. Her heart beat faster. She was sure Nora's spirit was waiting, somewhere hidden beneath the shadows. The villagers hurried home, slamming doors and windows, fearing what the rain would bring. That evening, as thunder rumbled low in the distance, a stranger arrived at the village gate. He was tall and cloaked in a dark, soaked robe. His eyes were sharp, deep, and filled with a strange knowledge. The elders gathered cautiously, unsure if this was a blessing or another curse. "I am Tano," the man said softly. "I have come to help you understand Nora's pain, and to stop the disappearances." Afia stepped forward, her voice trembling. "How do you know about Nora? And the children?" Tano looked at her and smiled sadly. "I once lived where Nora was born. I studied the ancient ways, the magic, the curses, and the truths that people fear. Nora's story is not one of evil, but of broken promises." The elders exchanged doubtful glances, but Afia felt a glimmer of hope. That night, Tano prepared a fire and laid out strange herbs and symbols in a circle. He called the villagers to gather around, instructing them to leave behind their fear and listen. "This is the ritual of the lost mother," Tano explained. "It will summon Nora's spirit, but this time to speak and be heard." The fire crackled, sending sparks into the dark sky. Afia held her breath as Tano began chanting in a language that felt both foreign and familiar. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and the flames flickered wildly. A shadow moved in the circle, a tall figure with glowing eyes and the cracked mask on her face. Nora had come, the voice of Nora. Her voice was soft but piercing. "Why do you seek me now? After all this pain and years of silence?" Afia stepped forward. "We want to help you, to end this curse. Please tell us what must be done." Nora's eyes softened. "The curse is not mine alone. It belongs to the village, to all who turned away from truth and justice." She told them about a hidden well deep inside the forest, where her child was thrown and forgotten. "The water poisoned his soul," she said. "To free us both, you must find the well and cleanse it with fire." Despite the fear, Afia volunteered to lead the search for the well. With Tano and a small group of villagers, she ventured into the dense jungle, guided only by Nora's whispered directions. The forest was alive, twisting roots like serpents, shadows that danced and vanished. At times, they heard distant cries or soft singing carried by the wind. After hours of searching, they found it. A dark, deep well covered with moss and spider webs. The air around it was heavy and cold. Afia poured water from her flask, and Tano lit a small fire on the edge of the well. As the flames met the water, a strange glow rose from the depths. The air shimmered. For a moment, the village's pain felt like it might end. Back in the village, the rain stopped, and the clouds began to clear. The villagers waited anxiously. That night, Afia dreamed of Nora one last time. The witch smiled sadly. "Thank you for listening. Remember me not as a monster, but as a mother who lost her way. Now the forest can rest, and so can the children." Afia awoke to the first rays of dawn and felt a calm she had never known. But as she looked at the cracked mask hanging by her door, she knew the story was not over. Only transformed. The villagers of Ekon dared to step outside their homes at night, their faces less shadowed by fear. Yet, the forest remained alive with whispers, soft, urgent, like the breath of a restless spirit. Afia couldn't shake the feeling that Nora's story was still unfinished. The cracked mask hanging by her door was a reminder that the past was not quite buried. The village elders gathered once more to discuss the future. They spoke of the ritual's success, the stopped disappearances, and the cleansing of the well. But some, including Omba, remained cautious. "Nora's anger has not left us," Omba said, his voice heavy with worry. "We must stay vigilant. The forest watches, and so do the shadows." Afia agreed silently, but wondered if the shadows were more than just fear. What secret still hid beneath the ancient trees? One humid night, Afia was awakened by a faint sound. It was a child's cry, low and sorrowful, coming from the edge of the forest. She slipped out of her hut and followed the sound, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and hope. The moon was veiled behind clouds, and the path was slippery with wet leaves. As she neared the source, the cries grew louder, and then suddenly stopped. Through the fog, Afia saw a figure sitting by the roots of a giant baobab tree. It was a small boy, drenched and shivering, clutching a tattered doll. "Who are you?" Afia asked softly. The boy looked up, his eyes shining with an eerie light. "My name is Kofi," he whispered. Afia's breath caught. Was this the boy who had vanished months ago? Before she could move closer, a cold wind swept through the clearing. A voice, deep and echoing, spoke from the darkness. "Do not trust what you see, child of the village. The forest holds many faces, and not all wear the mask of Nora." Afia spun around, but saw only trees and mist. When she looked back, the boy was gone. Her heart hammered in her chest. Was this a trick of the spirit, or a warning from something darker? The next day, Afia shared her experience with Tano and the elders. Some dismissed it as a dream or hallucination, but others, especially the women, whispered about seeing strange shadows near their homes. The rain continued, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, as if the sky itself mourned. Determined to uncover the truth, Afia and Tano decided to explore the forest's depths once more. They followed a narrow stream until they reached a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. Inside, they found ancient drawings, symbols of a mother, a child, and a circle of fire. Tano traced the symbols with reverence. "These are the marks of an ancient tribe, guardians of the forest's secrets. Nora was once one of them, a protector betrayed." Afia felt a chill run down her spine. Could the legend of Nora be more than just a curse? Could it be a warning, a story twisted by fear? As they left the cave, the forest seemed to breathe around them. A soft glow illuminated the path. Fireflies? Or something more? Afia whispered a promise to Nora's spirit. "I will find the truth, and I will set you free." The rain began again, tapping gently on the leaves, like a lullaby from the forest itself. The rain fell steadily over Econ Village, turning the dirt paths into slippery trails of mud and leaves. Afia sat by her hut's fire, the cracked mask hanging on the wall beside her like a silent reminder of the curse that had haunted their lives. The ritual had brought some peace, but the whispers in the forest hadn't stopped. Afia knew the truth was still hidden deep in the shadows. That morning, Tano arrived with an old, weathered parchment. The edges were brittle, and the ink faded, but the symbols and words were clear enough to tell a story that might hold the key to Nora's curse. "This letter was found in a ruined temple far beyond the forest," Tano explained. "It speaks of a sacred pact broken by greed and betrayal, a pact made by Nora's tribe to protect the children of the forest." Afia traced the symbols carefully. The letter told of a guardian spirit who would take a child each year until the debt was paid in full. As Afia read, a chilling realization took hold. Nora was not just a witch. She was a mother, a protector, but also a prisoner of an ancient wrong. The villagers had forgotten the pact. They had taken from the forest without respect, and Nora's curse was their punishment. Determined to end the cycle, Afia and Tano planned a journey deep into the heart of the forest to find the original altar where the pact had been made. They prepared for days, gathering supplies and offerings, herbs, firewood, and sacred water. The night before their departure, Afia dreamt of Nora. The witch's eyes were filled with sorrow. "Only when the debt is honored will the children be safe. But beware, the forest tests those who seek its truth." At dawn, Afia and Tano entered the dense jungle. The canopy above swallowed the sunlight, and every step brought them deeper into silence, broken only by distant animal calls and the crunch of leaves underfoot. The path was treacherous, filled with hidden roots and sudden drops, but Afia's resolve was stronger than her fear. After days of travel, they found it, a stone altar covered in moss and ancient carvings. The air around it was thick with energy, heavy and electric. Tano began the ceremony, lighting the sacred fire and pouring the water around the altar. Afia placed the offerings carefully, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Suddenly, the ground trembled. From the shadows, a figure emerged, Nora herself, but not as the fearful witch the village knew. She was radiant, glowing with a fierce but sorrowful light. "You have come to repay the debt," she said softly. "But the forest demands one final test." Afia nodded. "I am ready." Nora raised her hand and the forest around them shifted. The trees seemed to lean closer, the wind whispering secrets. Afia felt a vision flood her mind. Memories of the past, of betrayal, loss, and broken promises. Redemption or ruin. The test was not just of courage, but of heart. Afia had to face the pain of the village's sins and accept responsibility for healing old wounds. With tears streaming, she spoke words of apology and promise, not just for herself, but for all her people. The debt is acknowledged. The cycle may end. The rain began to fall gently, washing away the darkness. When Afia and Tano returned to Ekon, the village was different. The air was lighter and the shadows less threatening. The mask on Afia's wall had vanished. Nora's spirit was finally at peace. But Afia knew the forest would always remember, and so would she. The story of Nora was no longer just a tale of fear. It was a reminder of respect, courage, and the power of forgiveness. The morning after Afia and Tano returned from the altar, a new energy pulsed through the village of Econ. The heavy fog that usually hung around. The trees had lifted, replaced by a soft golden light that seemed to warm the very earth beneath their feet. For the first time in many seasons, the villagers felt a cautious hope bloom in their hearts. The forest no longer whispered threats but hummed a gentle song. The animals, once scarce, now emerged boldly near the village borders. Birds sang melodies that felt like messages, ancient and wise. Elders gathered in the open square, their faces marked by years of worry but now softened by relief. "Nora's curse has lifted," Omba declared solemnly. "We owe our lives to Afia's courage and Tano's wisdom." Afia walked through the village, watching children play freely under the sun. Mothers no longer feared the night, and fathers smiled without the burden of dread. She visited the families who had lost children in past years, offering words of comfort and remembrance. At the heart of the village stood a new monument, a carved stone shaped like a mother holding a child, surrounded by symbols of fire and water, earth and air. It was a tribute to Nora and the children taken by the forest, a reminder never to forget the past. One evening, Afia found a small wooden box near the old well. Inside lay the cracked mask, but this time it was different. The eyes seemed to glow faintly, not with anger, but with peace. Afia held the mask close and whispered, "Thank you, Nora. Your story will live in our hearts." Not as a curse, but as a lesson. With the curse lifted, Afia felt a new responsibility. She began learning the ancient ways, studying the symbols and stories hidden in the forest. The villagers asked her to be their guardian, the bridge between the human world and the forest. Spirits. Though the path was difficult, Afia accepted. She knew that Nora's spirit would watch over her. As the seasons changed, the village of Econ grew stronger and wiser. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined the people. Each year, on the anniversary of the ritual, the villagers gathered to honor Nora and the children lost to the forest. Songs were sung, fires lit, and stories shared. Stories of courage, forgiveness, and hope.